Welcome to the Inclusive Leadership Coaching Podcast. I'm Terri Donohue, your neurospicy inclusion coach. I am an ICF PCC life and leadership coach, passionate about social justice and specializing in neurodiversity. My purpose on this journey is to partner with you as you build an inclusive coaching practice that expands your impact. Here on the Inclusive Leadership Coaching Podcast, we believe leadership isn't just about titles or positions of power. It's about behavior, collaboration, and creating real, inspiring change. So let's get to it. Hey, leaders. I am so excited because today you have a very special guest. My friend and badass inclusive leadership coach, Ingrid Hu Dahl. Did I pronounce that right, Ingrid?
I've never said. Yeah, you did great.
Thanks. Now, let me tell you about a little bit about Ingrid. She's an author, speaker, leadership coach with a consulting business dedicated to empowering the next generation of leaders. With over 2 decades of experience in learning and development, she brings her expertise in leadership, experience design, and inclusion across multiple industries. She works with everyone from startup founders to senior execs to individuals looking to accelerate their purpose and impact. Ingrid is also a TEDx speaker and a founding member of the Willie Mae Rock Camp in Brooklyn. Very fascinating. I'm learning like all these things about you. She's been doing the work, y'all, and she does it well. Ingrid has a lifelong passion for amplifying underrepresented voices, and she's even written, filmed, and directed 2 short films exploring identity, representation, and mixed race experiences. That's my chair. And get this, her memoir, it's called Sun Rising on Morning Snow. And I'm looking outside my window right now and I'm getting the vibes. Will be published this June 11th, 2025. Ingrid, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please introduce yourself to the leaders out there.
Thank you so much, Terri. Gosh, I'm almost not even sure what else to say after all that you shared in my bio. So thank you so much. I am really deeply honored to be here as your friend and honestly, a fan. I'm a fan of yours. I will reiterate that the memoir, Sun Shining on Morning Snow, is a true testament to growing up in 1980, when it was just 13 years after interracial marriage was legalized. And in the year of 1980, the US Census reported only 2% of married couples were interracial. So my journey in the book, just to share more about me, is truly a testament of looking through my eyes as a mixed race young person, growing up within the systems of oppression that be and xenophobia, all throughout my life. So the book takes you from birth all the way to my mid 40s. And I really hope your listeners pick up a copy on June 11th.
How exciting! How exciting. And she's super modest, you all. Like, I didn't know half of these things. When I snatched her bio from LinkedIn, my jaw dropped. Is it Ingrid? You're
Same.
literally my Facebook friend. I had no idea.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for being here with
An
us.
honor.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear more of your story today because we like to get personal here. And we are having some really courageous conversations today. So this is going to
Hmm.
be good. Leaders out there, y'all know how bad I wanted to do this episode. It's actually the right to comfort, but I didn't put that in the title. And I wanted to do this weeks ago, but I felt called to pivot at that time to do inclusive emotional intelligence episode instead. Then after collaborating and catching up with Ingrid, the light bulb went off in my head and I knew we had to circle back to this conversation. So here we are. Oh, but today's episode is not only on the right to comfort, we're also diving into the fear of open conflict as well. And these two concepts go hand in hand. I'm going to do a little breakdown just to explain what all of this means in case people aren't aware. These two ideas came from critical work in anti racism and social justice, particularly, and I'm not sure on her name pronunciation. I don't know if you know, Ingrid, Tema Okuns? Yeah, that sounds right. Research on white supremacy culture characteristics. These insights were drawn from her foundational work on dismantling systemic patterns of oppression. I will definitely drop her website in the show notes for all of the fact finders out there. And I do want to give my white supremacy culture analogy for the newcomers that don't know. I want to do this analogy because I always notice that when I say white supremacy culture, people tend to get a little uncomfortable. I'm wondering if you listeners out there felt that at all. White supremacy culture is the water we're all swimming in. It's not the shark. That is white supremacist, extremist in the water. We're all swimming in this water with, let's say, backpacks on. And some people's backpacks are lighter than other people's backpacks. But we're all impacted by the water. It's almost like the air we breathe. It's the media, the news, the everything. That is the culture that we're all swimming in.
It's a great analogy, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you. The right to comfort is a characteristic of the water we're swimming in. And it is a tendency to avoid conversations that might be emotionally charged, especially when discussing topics like power, privilege, and inclusion. It's that instinct to protect ourselves, but in doing so, we often silence necessary dialogue about systemic inequalities. Here's an example. If you've ever found yourself biting your tongue in a meeting, staying silent to keep the peace, you're experiencing the right to comfort in real time. So, as we explore this topic, I want you to ask yourself, where in your life are you choosing comfort over growth?
Ooh, what a great question, Terry.
Thanks, Ingrid.
Ooh, yeah. I hope listeners are
Right?
really feeling that.
Hmm. So now let's take another characteristic that is the fear to open conflict. That is the human impulse to keep the peace at all cost, even when it means avoiding uncomfortable truths. In the workplace and coaching spaces, this often looks like prioritizing surface level harmony over real transformational conversations. Y'all, let me break something down real quick. Just to explain these two differences a little bit more. These two concepts, the right to comfort and the fear of open conflicts, might sound like fancy academic mumbo jumbo, but they're two sides to the same messy, uncomfortable coin. Think of it like this: the right to comfort, that's you personally shutting down a tough conversation because it feels icky. And the fear to open conflict, that's the whole workplace or system doing the same thing. So one's personal and one's more systemic, but they're both about dodging the real work of change. It's like when someone brings up a tough topic and suddenly everyone finds something super interesting to stare at on their shoes. So, Ingrid.
Lovely. Well
Mm,
said.
thank you. When we avoid discomfort, we also avoid the deep work that leads to real change. So, Ingrid, I know you have a lot of experience with these concepts, and I've said a mouthful. And you being an inclusive leadership coach and have tons of lived experience, what are your thoughts on how this shows up for people?
Oh man, I remember watching The Right to Comfort and navigating the systematic fear of open conflict, even as a young girl. And I actually share this personal story in one of my chapters of my book, which is very much on a one-sided courageous conversation. So I'll share the story with you and the listeners right now. It was a relatively cold February morning in central New Jersey, and I was about 5 years old, first grader, standing at a bus stop with a few other children, my age group and a little older. And one boy who happened to be white, which many of the people in my neighborhood were. I was the only mixed race individual and only interracial family in the development. And there's only one other Black family in the development. Everybody else is white. So, as you can imagine, all the kids at this bus stop besides me are white. And this one fifth grader, out of nowhere, I'm not engaging, talking to anybody, I'm minding my own business, out of nowhere, looks at me with a sort of strangely distorted face. The expression is heated, angry. It was hard to delineate. But he says, directed at me, half piece of shit. And I knew that the word shit, Terry, was a curse word. It was not a good
Yeah.
word, but I had never been called that before. So it was this really interesting moment where xenophobia felt like taffy. Like you could feel xenophobia slow and sticky stretching around me and this boy and the rest of the white kids, even extending into the neighborhood. And for me, it was a moment as the person receiving it, realizing that this wasn't an opportunity to have a dialogue nor an open, courageous conversation. This was a one way directed towards. So I'm sitting there observing and absorbing this and having this realization as a 5-year old that xenophobia, racism, hate and blame, jealousy or envy um, was not necessarily within this boy, but perhaps he was the messenger representing the entire community we lived in. And as a young person, I didn't necessarily feel worried about my own safety in that moment. It was jarring, but I was almost more deeply concerned about my parents' safety. So when I was writing this, I was telling you this when we were prepping, I had a writing coach. And writing coaches are a bit different than your kind of ICF certified coaches because they're really there to lean in and push you into areas where you're like not comfortable. So the courageous conversation that my writing coach was asking me to have is not back with this fifth grader, wherever they are as an adult today, but back with me. So my present adult aware self, going back to that first grader self to spend time looking at that taffy to describe what I was feeling, not what I saw in this boy's angry, spiteful face and his expression and the feelings and the taffy, but what was I feeling in that moment? And how could I translate the slowed down amount of time to observe and get curious and hang out with my first grade self to learn in the present? And very much so, not only did I learn, but I was able to describe and provide that new observational insight to the reader through the book.
Uncomfortable, but yet so courageous of that coach. I do have a couple of questions though. When you said the taffy was a xenophobia, what does that mean, a xenophobia?
Oh, to me, xenophobia is like a moment of racism occurring, a lens
Mm,
of you are different than me, and I have more power over and the power to be informed about what your ethnic background is. It is very much what you were saying about white supremacy culture.
mm-hmm,
The taffy that connects that system is xenophobia to me.
mm. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm wondering, do you feel comfortable sharing your identity? Because I don't think we did that in the
Oh,
beginning.
yeah, I'd be honored to.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you for asking. And I hope y'all see like how lovely Terry just modeled that because as a mixed race person where almost every day as a kid I was asked, "What are you?" which really does translate to the real question is what is your ethnic background? Sometimes I just wish somebody would be honest and ask that with the permission that I could say, I don't want to share that with you without somebody getting angry, which happened a lot. People got very angry. They want to know, they demand to know, they have a right to know. So, if you paid attention to Terry, what a beautiful, kind, curious, inclusive way to ask. And I willingly want to share that I am well, 23andMe would say these percentages aren't correct, but essentially, I am both Norwegian, European, German, and the other half, which represents my mother, is Chinese based from Taiwan.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much. And, I feel the same way. I'm Jamaican American, and while I lived in the US, everyone assumed I was African American. Not that it's a big deal, but it is for me because identity is very deeply personal, and it's personal for everyone. I would love if a coach was to ask me how I identified instead of assuming.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Made me think about Asian American
Hmm.
too, because that's so, it's like just like lumping everybody who has so many different kinds of Asian experiences. And I think the mixed race communities, whether half white, half black, half white, half Asian, etc., um, aren't always like included in that either. So they're so broad, African American, Asian American. I love that you bring that up. Thank you for that.
And I just wanted to acknowledge and say how sorry how painful that must have been,
Oh, thank you,
and
Terry.
acknowledge.
So appreciate that. I will put you next to me the next time I'm going back there, and it'll make me feel like I've got a bestie standing by, got my back.
Yes. So yeah, listeners out there, leaders, this would be a courageous conversation to have in coaching spaces. And I loved the way Ingrid, your writing coach, had the courage to work with this experience and help and support you. I don't want to say help, but support you to walk through it. Yeah, since we are in a coaching space and this is to make leadership coaches practice more inclusive, one of the biggest challenges that I tend to see is equating discomfort with unethical coaching.
Hmm.
This writing coach, for instance, a lot of coaches, or maybe she could have felt like, oh, well, maybe I'm not qualified to do that.
Mm,
Or maybe that's a lot and could have missed an opportunity of growth and change in your life, which she took it and she courageously stepped up to do that. Now, don't get me wrong, coaching should always be a psychologically safe space, but safe doesn't mean comfortable. We have to kind of start getting real, right? A coach can courageously challenge a client through asking tough questions or holding firm boundaries, challenging their thoughts, their perspectives. But ignoring discomfort doesn't make it go away, doesn't make the challenge go away, or the topic really, because it might show up again. It just shuts down the conversation. And actually, I wouldn't feel safe in that space if I wanted to have a conversation about my race, about racism and a xenophobia that I've experienced and you've experienced. So, avoiding these tough conversations in coaching can do more harm than good, don't you
mhm.
think, Ingrid?
Yeah, I definitely do. I love that you're making this connection. Absolutely.
We see this also playing out in the workplace.
Oh, yeah.
How often have we watched someone raise a difficult issue at work and then get labeled as negative? or disruptive instead of actually addressing the problem. And it's not only at work, it's in communities, it's in families. Like you say something that people don't want you to say and they think it's disruptive. And you're the problem versus actually addressing what the topic was or the problem.
Oh my goodness, all the time. And that's the thing, it's so much easier to blame or label or judge somebody instead of bringing in the real issue at
Mm.
hand to the heart of the topic and the conversation. And confronting the actual issue itself takes a tremendous amount of bravery. So I recommend the moment listeners who are coaches feel that they're kind of quieting themselves or they got that like, ooh, oh, I don't really feel comfortable with that. The moment you feel that discomfort, challenge it, push it within you. And the moment you're observing that happening within your client's experience, get curious about it and remind that you're there supporting them and ask the tough question, push them a little bit, push them to help see and be brave. I wanted to share an example of having a courageous conversation in the workplace, Terry, because you got me thinking about the workplace.
Okay.
And because, my example as a first grader with a fifth grader isn't a conversation, as I mentioned. But as an adult, a couple of years ago, I had a courageous conversation. And what's fascinating is I needed to make the choice that I wanted to invest in the courageous conversation because that takes time. And you also have to kind of get permission from the other person that they are also willing to be present in the courageous conversation you're inviting them to have. So, this is also actually in the book, but I'm working in a financial tech company in this scenario. And a white older male coworker of mine, we are the same leadership level. We have a great copacetic working relationship. We banter, like things are feeling pretty chill.
Yeah, you cool, you
But
cool.
yeah, exactly. Like we're good. We have a good working relationship. But at one moment in the middle of work, this colleague decides to offer me a compliment, or in his view, it's a compliment. And he says, Ingrid, you are so exotic. And for listeners out there who might not have coached somebody who's mixed race like me and queer, by the way, exotic is actually quite triggering. Exotic is a word for the Orient, the mysterious Asian Oriental, which is not appropriate to say anymore. Oriental refers to an object like a rug. And yet, for a very long time, we were referred to objects saying they are Oriental. So, in the same line where we wouldn't use that word, exotic is also not a word to describe somebody who looks uniquely different or mixed races. There's also a lot of undertones of sexual connotations, which there's a whole other thread to, especially when you're talking with women, women of color. Those dynamics exist and they can be quite harmful. So I had to take a deep breath, which I'm doing right now, and I invited my coworker into a courageous conversation. And I said, "Ooh, that word's really hard for me. It actually feels painful receiving it. And I'd love to explain why that feels like that on the receiving end. Would you be willing to learn or hear more about why that is for me?" And to his credit, he said tentatively, right? Like he was kind of hesitating, but he's like, yes, I am curious about that. And I do want to know, why is that painful for you? So thankfully, that then was a committed, we're in the courageous conversation aura or orb.
Not afraid of conflict.
Right.
He
Willing,
embraced it. Yeah.
right? We're both willing. And I explained a lot of what I just shared about exotic, being called that, the sexualized undertones, like, the history of that. And at the end of that tiny, brief, like, explainer, I asked very vulnerably, like, what what were you trying to offer me? What were you trying to say? I'd like to hear it. And he said, I was trying to give you a compliment. I'm like, so what were you trying to compliment specifically? My leadership? I'm confused. And he's like, I think I could have complimented you and your leadership, which I very much respect. But in that moment, I was complimenting how I thought you appeared, your
Mm,
appearance. And I was like, as a woman of color, let's not even mention my appearance or your appearance. Let's
mhm.
talk about how we respect each other as colleagues, coworkers, collaborators, and fellow leaders. And again, to his credit, he heard me, he agreed, and he's like, wow, I really appreciate this because I never knew that that word was so triggering for people, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to remove that from my language. And I said, I will be right here with you if you fall and you need any kind of support or additional insight. It never came up again. It never was brought up. He didn't ever mention my appearance again, which was lovely. But I think if we don't have those really real conversations with people, the brave, courageous conversations to lean into discomfort and to also say our truth and for people to want to hear the truth, it feels like it has to be a bit of a reciprocity in that exchange.
Yes, a partnership, like in coaching.
Yeah, push through the discomfort
Yeah,
together.
and pushing through. Yes. I absolutely love that story because it is a clear picture of both where he leaned into that discomfort. You had this conversation together and you literally, he grew and changed from it, and your relationship became maybe a little bit closer because
Yeah,
that's when you are now feeling, you can tell me if I'm wrong, more safe with him, that he
yes,
was able to listen, receive, learn, grow, and take it.
that's right. We did get a stronger relationship for sure
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah. And that's how I feel too in spaces where someone is willing to hear me, see me, and value me.
Hmm.
And you have that connection with someone that has a different identity and they can take it with them and I don't know, use their knowledge, use their power for good.
Hmm. I hope
You know,
so.
I actually I have this almost same, not same, different scenario. I am in an interracial marriage. My husband's white, German, Irish. And someone at work on this job said, "Oh, your husband, oh, he must have like a fetish or he likes exotic women." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh,
how
so he has
rude
like a
and
black woman
painful.
fetish?"
Oh.
Really? What about my character? What about how amazing of a person I am?
Mhm.
What about like how funny I am and how cool I must be to be around all the time? What
Which is
about
true.
those things? Does it have to be like that? I said that, and everyone looked at their shoes and just kind of, oh, yeah. And he was like, he said, oh, yeah, 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 I guess. He was a comedian. It was on a TV show I worked on. He was a comedian, so he kind of did some kind of funny joke, and we laughed it off. But the moment you had where there was that partnership is where it is, not the experience I had, because that stuck with me.
Yeah,
Like,
so I feel the pain in that. That's, oh gosh. I'm
yeah,
sorry you experienced that.
yeah, it's like, what do you, yeah. Anyway, so,
And it kind of goes back to sexualization of otherness. Like exotic does that,
mhm,
fetish does that, right? Like, oh, they must have. And it always positions the white male as the chooser who gets to choose what they prefer, as opposed
mm,
to what I assume, and no shade on your husband, but my assumption is that you chose him. You're like, okay, I like
yeah,
you. You have to kind of really work to show that you're going to be like jiving with this badassness.
yeah.
And so for me, it's the opposite. I assume that he must be a really rad dude if you picked him.
That's what I'm saying, girl. He is. That's what I'm saying. He
Truth.
definitely is.
Mm.
Thank you, Ingrid. In coaching,
Mm,
discomfort is often where the real transformation happens.
preach. Yep.
Like, even in this conversation we're having here today, don't you feel how real it is? This reminds me of the core competencies.
Oh, great. I'm so glad you're
Yeah.
bringing this back in. Cool.
It reminds me because, I've been doing some mentor coaching, Ingrid.
Great.
And we're always talking about the core competencies and helping a lot of coaches, credential and just working through becoming a stronger coach. And in the competencies, respect is creating a space for honesty and tough conversations.
That's right.
And active listening is holding that space for discomfort instead
Mm.
of shutting it down.
Mm-hmm.
And the partnership is challenging clients in a way that supports
Mm.
their growth. Hmm.
Yeah, that's really resonating. Ooh, those three. Thank you for anchoring us into that.
Discomfort is not bad and it's not unethical. And I love that you use the word brave. I don't know why. Every time you say it, I'm like, my gosh, like, should this episode be called Bravely Coaching? Yeah.
Yeah, pushing through discomfort is living bravely. It's
Mm,
choosing to live boldly. And I always feel like when I work with my clients, and I feel this too as, an adult, if you allow it, your comfort zone shrinks over time as you age. And if you allow it, get real tight, like you've been like shrink wrapped around you and pushing through that discomfort, choosing to live boldly, your truth, bravely, helps keep your comfort zone in the beautiful, wide, full of growth and learning past fear. Like you're able to see fear and be like, I'm good with fear. Fear is going to get me towards growth and learning. It's kind of when
mm,
I think about people are like really uncomfortable about like how AI can work in partnership with our skill sets. No, it's going to take my job and it probably will replace some jobs. However, it's an opportunity to grow, be curious, learn, get out of your comfort zone. And I think that's all like what we're trying to do too with our clients. It might not be the topic is how to integrate with AI, but in this topic, how to connect courageously with ourselves and with others. And how do we also push out of our tight little comfort zone is so important. So important.
yeah, we got to get out of that bubble and expand. And I believe that the more you know, the more fun it is.
Mm,
Discomfort equals growth
yep,
and deeper awareness.
that's right. Boom, boom, boom. You hit
Mm.
it.
A strong, inclusive coach isn't going to avoid the tough stuff. They're going to lean into curiosity and do their work with these conversations, because after a while, when you have these courageous conversations, don't you think it gets easier? Like how I
Yeah.
had mentioned, Ingrid, how we've had this conversation before, and coaches were probably like, Terry, you didn't say anything about how challenging that moment. It was like, oh, we've had so many challenging
Yeah.
or courageous conversations that it's like, yeah, give it to me, give me more.
Yeah, it feels familiar and safe. Yeah, and flowing.
Exactly. Hmm. I think we might be ready to wrap it on up, huh?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And I love what you said about growth, challenge, and deeper awareness, and the familiarity that comes that if this is common practices, you're just constantly growing and your clients are growing. Like, man, what a goal and an action item for us all to hold on to.
Yeah. So the antidote sounds like courage.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's the avenue towards inclusive leadership coaching.
Hmm.
And as two inclusive leadership coaches, it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
It's always feels like we're just walking down and a path and dancing along the way. So thank you for being that bestie with me next to the bus stop, supporting me along the way, even as an adult. So thank you for this session and inviting me to join today.
And don't forget, coaches, if you want to know more about her story, and where can they find your book? Where is it
Ooh,
coming? Yeah, like,
on June 11th, great question. Any book distributor, so Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you like to get your books ordered to you. It will also then a couple weeks later be available on Kindle if you like to read on a Kindle. And then end of July, it will be audio book, so anyone can listen to it, and I will be narrating it. So those are the three ways.
I love audio. I'm so happy you said that. That's right, girl. Accessibility.
Right.
And you're narrating. Oh my gosh, how awesome is that?
Yeah, thank you. I got a lot of coaching from an amazing woman who's helping me because that's a whole different way to tell a story, reading your book. Woo.
Oh, mm, fascinating. Remember, coaches, inclusion doesn't start when you're sitting in front of your clients. It's a way of being and moving through the world. Thank you again, Ingrid. You can follow us both on LinkedIn. We're there, we're interacting. I need to interact more. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Leave a review, help us out. Until next time.
Thanks, Terry.
Bye. Boom! Shakalaka! And that is a wrap on this episode of the Inclusive Leadership Coaching Podcast. If something in today's conversation got you thinking, I would love to hear about it. Connect with me on LinkedIn or at terridonohue.com. And hey, if you're enjoying this podcast or you really want to support me, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review, and stick around. There's plenty more to come. Next time, we'll dive into even more exciting conversations. Until then, keep leading with inclusion in mind.